All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for meeting tonight for tonight's City Council meeting. I'm Kyle Taylor, an advocate on behalf of individuals with intellectual disabilities. I am here today with my partner, Kourtney. Kourtney, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Kourtney Morgan. I am a special education teacher and a special education advocate, and I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you so much. Today, we're fortunate enough to have a couple individuals on behalf of the police force. We have Officer Matt Hardin. Matt, would you mind introducing yourself?
I'm Officer Matt Hardin from the local police force. I'm happy to be here tonight too to listen to different perspectives on a very important topic.
All right, and who is this with you today, Matt?
This is one of our union reps.
Hi, I'm Mestanza. I'm a union rep for the local police force, and thank you for inviting me to listen to your presentation.
All right, thank you for being here. Thank you everyone for attending this important meeting today to discuss an important topic on policing individuals with disabilities. I'd just like to share a couple statistics with everyone. When compared to non-disabled peers, individuals with disabilities are subjected to an increased risk of criminal victimization. Individuals with disabilities have been historically victimized by individuals with whom they have a close relationship with, such as family members, friends, and caretakers. Also, they have been historically victimized by strangers and police officers as well. Due to a common perception that individuals with disabilities are considered vulnerable, they are often the victims of robbery, verbal abuse, physical assault, among other crimes. Hughes et al. States that police officers themselves have reported that individuals with disabilities are considered easy targets when it comes to being victimized. Additionally, individuals with disabilities are at risk of being victimized by police officers due to misunderstandings of disability or lack of knowledge on how to accommodate their needs while maintaining the rigor of being a police officer. Medell and Mack discuss how these misunderstandings and lack of knowledge has led to unwarranted and excessive force used upon individuals with disabilities, as well as wrongful arrests. Therefore, the availability, frequency, and quality of disability training among law enforcement needs to be improved upon with an increased focus on cooperating and communicating with victims with disabilities, as well as classifying and contextualizing situations in which an individual with a disability may be considered a perpetrator. Officer Hardin, I understand that you've been on the police force for quite a few years now. Would you say that you come across situations with individuals with disabilities often?
Absolutely. And I think sometimes there's a much gray area there. So at some points it's hard to tell if someone is impaired or if someone has a disability. So that's one of the tough things from our side of things, is asking the right questions and kind of moving in the right direction.
I understand. Would you say that it shocks you that individuals with developmental disabilities are 4 to 10 times more likely to become victims of a crime than individuals without disabilities?
You know, it's one of the very unfortunate things that come with in my line of work. Unfortunately, I know we've kind of talked about the shoot first, ask questions later type thing. But when we were looking into things in this exact area of research, one of the things I looked at was from a Blank and a Laley, where only 10% of our calls are police calls are for people with disabilities. So that means we have 90% of our calls where we have to make a judgment on someone who does not have a disability. But there's so much gray area there that there's some danger that comes with our being as well. So that's kind of the tough spot that we're in, is our safety and our lives are on the line as well. So what decisions do we have to make in a split second?
Sure, I understand that the demands of your job are very tough, and every situation is unique. However, you mentioned that only 10%, was it 10% of your calls that you said are individuals with
That's
disabilities?
correct.
All right, but of those 10%, Medell and Mack also state that victimization rates for individuals with disabilities are 10 times more likely to be a victim of sexual assault or 12 times more likely to be a victim of robbery. Therefore, if you were to be handling a situation where it's a sexual assault or a robbery, chances are that individual has a disability. Am I wrong?
So correct. So on the side of ours with our data, the statistics here is the police calls when we're looking at someone that's a suspect, not a victim. So if we're going out to a call for someone doing something wrong, only 10% of those calls.
Mr. Hardin, what would something be wrong in these calls? What can you give me an example of doing something wrong?
If someone is loitering in front of 7-Eleven and we get called to that, if it happens 10 times, one of those times would be a person with a disability, whether they have a speech impairment or maybe they have an intellectual disability. But 9 of those times it's someone that may be under the influence or is, not making the right choices at that time. So we have to go there and make that split-second decision on, is this person someone with a disability, or is this one of the 9 cases out of 10 where this person is doing something wrong right now and my life might be in danger, or the people around them may be in danger as well.
Could you agree that in that split second, do you think that training would be beneficial to make a better equipped decision for those cases? Do you think that training for your police force, those guys, instead of shooting first and asking questions later, do you think it would benefit them in the situations?
I definitely think training would be good. I think what training entails is more, it's easier said than done, of course. And there's so much gray area when it comes to the umbrella of disabilities, where I think there would even be more misunderstandings or more misinterpretations of where then we may be thinking, oh, I might be afraid to make a choice, in which again, and let's not use shoot first. Let's just say, we talk to them first, or we put them in our car. We're not, let's not, I don't want to go as far as saying shooting. I think a safety issue would be, if we take them in for questioning, even if it means they have to be, put in handcuffs so everyone is safe. I think that puts us in a spot where our lives are not at stake. And I think then we can talk to them and ask questions.
So what if someone is autistic and has a sensory issue, and if someone is approaching them and wanting to put their arms behind their back or use, like metal, or it's all sensory, and it would not want to be in handcuffs, and they're not, what's the word for it? They're not
like compliant?
willingly to be handcuffed. What do we do then?
Yeah, and again, I think that's one of the tough situations where then as an officer, and like you mentioned the training, it's then us thinking on our feet and knowing, is this someone that has a disability and that's why they're not complying, or are they just resisting arrest as, a person without a disability that doesn't want to, comply with an officer's wishes?
Officer Hardin, how do you determine whether a person has a disability or not? You mentioned someone who's standing outside of a 7-Eleven who may seem impaired. How would you determine personally, and based off of the training that you've received, how you would handle that situation? And Miss Megan, I'd like to know what kind of opportunities have already been presented to officers such as Officer Hardin here, and what the union is doing to ensure that not only are these officers well prepared, but what is being done to maintain their preparedness for policing individuals with disabilities?
Yeah, certainly. I can certainly understand your statements and your concerns. However, my main concern is funding. So, according to a study by Blank in 2017, funding has been decreasing for the state in the past few years. state funding, I mean, I hear what Mrs. Morgan is saying about training, and we do give our officers training quite frequently to kind of keep them up to date. There is a section in the training that addresses disabilities. However, additional training specifically on that section, it's gonna be hard to find funding for that. You know, I really think that state funding should go towards programs that increase the safety of the entire community and decrease more serious crimes. I just don't see where we get funding to address this issue.
So on that note, I'm actually going to bring up a Supreme Court case in Canton versus Harris, and it was a failure to train claims. And so basically, what in a nutshell, what this case is arguing, that you as the city would be held liable when there's inadequate training amounting to deliberate indifference to the rights of person of whom the police come in contact with. Now, in a nutshell, that's when the need for training is so obvious, which is people with disabilities. It violates constitutional rights, and it can reasonably said to be deliberately indifferent to the people in need. So the lack of funding, I think, would only just be a small time, you know, an excuse for now, because in the future, when these people are, you know, having their rights being denied and violated, you guys as a city would be able to be held liable for that.
Yes, and I appreciate everyone's time here, but unfortunately we have to move on to other topics. I'd like to thank Ms. Megan and Officer Hardin for meeting with us today. We understand that the roles of police officers are very difficult. We understand that every situation is unique. We understand that there's no perfect way of handling any situation. However, the stats don't lie. Individuals with disabilities are being victimized more than ever. They are, and when compared to other individuals without disabilities, they are very much so at an increased risk of victimization. So therefore, due to this, we need to make sure that we are being more consistent with, not only are we being more consistent, there are more opportunities for training on policing individuals with disabilities, and we are able to expand those trainings to all police officers on a more consistent basis. Officer Hardin, I'd like to thank you for your time. Ms. Megan, I'd like to thank you for your time. And Ms. Morgan, I'd like to thank you for your time as well. We will be moving on to another topic at the City Council meeting. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great night.